Hello, kids. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago I posted a video of me sketching and inking this comic? This video was basically supposed to be me finishing that off and coloring it digitally, but as it turns out, this is gonna take me a long ass time, and I only managed to finish like 2 full panels of the comic for this video, and I didn't even film the first one. I'll put it up on screen, but I decided that I didn't want to film the first one that I colored because I hadn't really figured out what I was going to do with it yet, or like what the process would be, so I wanted to just fiddle with it off camera, so to speak. But I did film this second one. I started off, as you see right now, with coloring the line art with like just so that it's not just black, and the reason there's a weird colored background is only so that I can see the lines better, because sometimes against just the white background or like the checkerboard one that indicates transparency, it's hard to see stuff sometimes. So that's why I put it in a color, and it's also easier to see if you missed a spot. And after I colored the line art, I just blocked in the base color, which, like, there are so many different ways to do this digitally. You can use like a selection and stuff, and like there is no easy or fast way to do it. That's just the beginning and end of it. And at this point I put in colors that would be similar to the ones that would be in the background in the final drawing, so that I could sort of see what the values I was using would look against that. Because sometimes if you just have a white background and you're painting against that, you accidentally make your colors too light because they seem darker against a white background than they will against the mid-tone that you're going to end up using in the end. I think close to this point I realized that Harry's, like, the back of his head is not big enough, and then I drew some more hair on the back of his head to make it look like he actually has a head and not just a face. It was around this point that I got really impatient with this particular panel, because just laying down the flat colors can be really tedious. So I decided to jump into something different for a while, and I started fiddling around with what's going to be the final layout of the comic. I had some trouble with this because I had a sketch of how I wanted it to go, but for some reason I couldn't get the panels to sort of fit into my idea of how I wanted it to be. But eventually I figured out that I just needed to be scaling down some of the frames, making them smaller in comparison to the last frame, which is sort of the main event. So that made it work in the end. And you can see my only finished panel at this point was the first one that I showed you earlier. I'll give you another closer look at that at the end of the video, I think. Anyway, this is sort of the layout that I settled on. It's the same one in my sketch. Then I went back to the last panel and started laying down some highlights and some shadows. They've added some like new layer modes into FireAlpaca in the latest update. I'm not sure if I used any in this particular panel, but I definitely used a lot of them, especially the soft light one in that first panel that I made with all the pillars and scenery and stuff. And yeah, I just was thinking sort of like a yellow, almost green light and then a kind of warmer purple shadow, I guess, with this. And after I laid down the base colors, I merged the flat color with the shadow and highlight layer and just started painting. Basically, this is my usual mode of operation. Is that a phrase? I don't think so. Anyway, this is usually how I work digitally. I sort of paint stuff, and usually I don't have line art either. I just merge the sort of cleaned up sketch layer with the color layer and just like paint everything together. But for this comic I wanted to have a line art because about a year ago I drew some like Drarry sketch things with like Stabilo markers like as line art. I colored them in with colored pencils. Anyway, I used some like funky colors like the turquoise in Draco's hair, and I decided, like, it's been haunting me ever since, this idea of colored line art, and that's why I decided to force myself to like work with line art, even though it's like very difficult for me most of the time. But I've come to the conclusion that I like it a lot more if it's like very thin line art. Like, I don't really like the look of thicker line art in other people's art sometimes, but I just can't really pull it off because my lines are all wobbly and shit. Anyways, I guess not much else to say about it. This. I was just rendering, you know, all the different bits, merging the layers, fiddling with it until it looked like something, and so on and so forth. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. I'm sorry I didn't finish the comic yet. I will eventually. I don't know if I'll make another video of the process, but I will definitely show it to you in some video once I'm done with it. And yep, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. And I'll now just give you a closer look at both of my finished panels. Bye!